Welcome to Vacations by Rail's Rail Insider, the show about global rail travel experiences and remarkable destinations around the world. I'm your host, Todd Powell. In this episode, we learn about a brand new rail service in the United States, Rocky Mountaineer's Rockies to the Red Rocks, which takes travelers between Denver, Colorado and Moab, Utah by the way of the Colorado Rockies. It is a rare event that a new passenger rail service launches in the United States, and one that travels through an incredibly scenic portion of track is even more rare. What's better yet, the Rockies to the Red Rocks is operated by the award-winning Rocky Mountaineer Railroad, which is best known for its spectacular all-daylight dome rail carriage service through the Canadian Rockies. Rocky Mountaineer is bringing its fleet of silver-leaf domes south of the Canadian border, giving passengers an opportunity to enjoy best-in-class rail service through the mountains and canyons of Colorado and Utah. To give us an insider's look at Rocky Mountaineer's Rockies to the Red Rocks, we welcome Michael Comeau, National Account Manager for the Rocky Mountaineer. Michael will update us on the Rocky Mountaineer's new rail service and what travelers can expect on what will be an unforgettable journey. So let's welcome Michael Comeau. Michael, thank you for joining me today to talk about Rocky Mountaineer's brand new rail route in the United States, Rockies to the Red Rocks. You know, many people are familiar with the Rocky Mountaineer as the spectacular all-daylight service in the Canadian Rockies. So I have to say, you know, when Rocky Mountaineer brought their world-renowned service in fabulous glass dome cars to the United States, I was super excited, particularly because the route that you're going to be traveling, which is between Denver, Colorado, and Moab, Utah. It's a fantastic route, super scenic, and for people who are interested in experiencing the United States by train, it's just an ideal way to kind of capture some of the beauty of the United States. Before we start talking about the Rockies to the Red Rocks route, why don't you give our listeners a little bit of a background on the Rocky Mountaineer and its 30 plus years of award-winning service?
Yes, well, first of all, Todd, thank you for inviting me this morning. Really a pleasure to be here and partner with Vacations by Rail. Yeah, so Rocky Mountaineer's 30th anniversary was last year. Would have been our 30th anniversary. Of course, we all know what happened in 2020, but we've been 30 years as a luxury train journey throughout Western Canada and the American Southwest. Now, our world-renowned trains travel by daylight, which we feel is the best way to experience some of the most amazing scenery that North America has to offer.
You know, Rocky Mountaineer, and like I said, people who are familiar with it know about those daylight routes in Canada that go to, you know, Jasper and Banff, and they start in Vancouver, and they have this fantastic service. The Rockies to the Red Rocks route, that really kind of takes that model and brings it to the United States. Can you walk me through the Rockies to the Red Rocks route and maybe tell a little bit why Rocky Mountaineer thought that this was such an ideal route for the United States?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a project that we have been working on for a while. Rocky Mountaineer, after 30 years of travel in Western Canada and reaching out between Vancouver and the Canadian Rockies, we have 3 routes in Canada, and our founder, Peter Armstrong, has always longed to seek a place in another destination outside of Canada where we could operate the trains like we do in Western Canada, where we're traveling by daylight and we overnight in a nice resort town where our guests can stay and enjoy the experience there, sleep in a comfortable bed, and get back on the train the next day for beautiful scenic journeys. And as far as this destination, like you mentioned, it's spectacular scenery. As far as that route goes, you're going between 2 very unique destinations, Denver and Moab. You've got Denver, which is a sprawling one of, you know, America's great cities, and Moab, which is the gateway to the Southwest, some of the best national parks in the Southwest. So it will be just like in Canada, it'll similar to our Canadian routes. It'll be a 2-day route with an overnight in Glenwood Springs, going both eastbound and westbound. So you can either start in Moab and journey going eastbound to Denver with the overnight in Glenwood Springs, or go westbound starting in Denver.
So, this route, it's really a historic route too in the United States. It's this journey west. It's the starting, when you start this route in Denver, it's really pretty awe-inspiring. From my own experience, taking the trains in the United States, when you climb that front range of the Colorado Rockies, or you come down if you're coming from the west heading east, or you come down the mountains and through Moffett Tunnel and over the Continental Divide, and then you come into Denver. It's quite like I said, it's awe-inspiring. It really, the majesty of the mountains as you're coming from the plains or coming out of the mountains into the plains, how the topography changes really makes for an ideal experience. And then you're following the Colorado River. What are some of the highlights of the routes that people can expect when they're taking it? Because I know from my own personal experience, how spectacular it is.
Yeah, it's you described it very well, Todd. And if I could kind of walk through like the eastbound route, the route between Moab and Glenwood Springs is about 194 miles, which is that first day would be about 5 days on board the train, and you're seeing a variety of scenery, including like mountain vistas, desert cliffs. The book cliffs are very interesting because they look like stacked books. So these carved formations are very unique. So that first day, if you're traveling on the eastbound route, is very interesting. And of course, we cross over the border from Utah into Colorado. We're traveling at an average speed of about 30 miles per hour. We jokingly call that Kodak speed, so our guests can take photos of the spectacular scenery. And on that route, we'll leave about 2 p.m. from Moab and get into Glenwood Springs about 7 p.m. And then the next day, scenery is quite different because when you travel into Colorado, you're getting into the Rockies, you're traveling about 60% of your journey is along the Colorado River. So you'll be passing through canyons and gorges, very rugged, steep rock walls with red rock scenery. And you'll be, of course, looking for wildlife. And on board the train, we have our wonderful hosts that are trained in not only serving our guests the dining and beverage experience, which we'll talk about, but they're also steeped in knowledge as far as the history of the region, of the geology, the wildlife, and the history of the rail system throughout the Southwest as well. So our guests get the education along with that spectacular scenery that they can see from the Silverleaf Dome cars.
So the guests, they're departing Moab. It's this 5-hour journey, and the one thing that you really touched on when you talked about that 5 hours between Moab and Glenwood Springs is when you're in the Colorado River. And one interesting part I think that people are going to be really taken by is you mentioned book cliffs, but then Ruby Canyon is another spectacular element of this journey because of its 25-mile long canyon has these brilliant colors, and then it's only accessible by train or river. So there's elements of this route that if you're not doing it by train, you're not going to be able to see it. And so I think those are some spectacular highlights. And then of course the going through the Glenwood canyons and so forth, past Glenwood Springs and into Denver, and the canyons and creeks in the Colorado River, it just all adds to like there's a surprise around every corner.
That's a very good point, Todd. I love the fact that when you're traveling by train, you get a vantage point that you can't usually get from any roadways, and it's very relaxing as well. But it's a very good point that most of this journey really cannot be visually experienced and enjoyed by car. And of course, if you're driving, you're not going to be able to really enjoy the scenery if you're navigating. So sit back and relax on board our luxury trains and just take in all that amazing scenery as we're passing through these spectacular vistas.
Right, and then when you talk about the visual elements to it, and we think about not being distracted when you're just on the rail cars and being able to take it all in, that's what I think really makes the fact that it's Rocky Mountaineer and Rocky Mountaineer's equipment that you're taking here to this route even more ideal for people that are looking to experience this part of the country and see it by train, because your equipment is phenomenal, and you're bringing your glass domes down to Colorado, right?
Yes, we are bringing the Silverleaf class dome. So back in 1990, when the company started, we basically had when Peter purchased this train set, it was a standard set of rail cars, smaller windows, nothing spectacular, but they were nice. And for several years, that's how we operated. And then we eventually brought ourselves to wanting a higher luxury experience. And Peter purchased these gold leaf cars with domes, glass domes, and a dining car down below. And then eventually in 2012, we launched the Silverleaf service, which replaced the old red leaf cars, which were smaller windows and very basic rail car. The Silverleaf experience has these large picture windows that kind of go from your seat all the way to the ceiling. So when you sit inside the Silverleaf dome car, you're seeing the scenery from your seat almost surrounding you, it's like being in a movie theater. So you're having that glass surrounding basically. And what's nice about the Silverleaf service is that guests can sit back and relax. There's lots of leg room. There's about 1.5 times as much leg room as on a standard plane seat, for example. It's almost exactly like a first class on a plane. As far as leg room is concerned, and guests get their meals served right at their seat. We include meals with multiple courses. On this particular route, we're going to be choosing a dining experience that's reflective of the flavors of the region of the Southwest. So we carefully look at the dining experience, we carefully look at our service, and of course, on the train, as in Canada and now on the US route, all of these routes include all the beverages. So whether it's soft drinks, coffee, tea, but also regional craft beer, which is definitely known, something that's known in the region, and the greater Denver area is known for its craft breweries. So we'll have some local craft beer, wine, as well as cocktails featured and included as part of the program with Rocky Mountaineer.
And that's ideal when you pull in those local flavors, and I think Rocky does such a fabulous job of doing that. And then when you touch on the Silverleaf dome cars, one of the things that really I get excited about when I'm on the train is when you're able to sit down. Let's say it's the morning and you get up and you board the train and the train moves out and you have a cup of coffee and that scenery is changing, like this constant artwork that's evolving and revealing itself as you go along the tracks. And I think this route really encompasses that. And with your your Silverleaf cars that you're going to be having, it's gonna amaze people, because when you're just encompassed with the scenery and the peaks, and like Glenwood Canyon, I mean it's a deep canyon. It's narrow and it's high walls to that canyon, and so to have those Silverleaf cars in the glass domes, to be able to look up and see some of the top edges of that, it's going to be fabulous. So you also have, though, as part of the Silverleaf carriages that you're bringing down, you're doing something called Silverleaf Plus. Can you explain a little bit about Silverleaf Pluses on the train and how that differs from the standard Silverleaf service that you're going to be offering?
Sure. Just to give a little backdrop behind the Silverleaf Plus and how that evolved. As some may know, in Canada, we have two classes of service. We have the gold leaf domes, which are a taller piece of equipment. They're a few feet higher than the Silverleaf because there's a dome car at the top and then the dining room down below. And then we have the Silverleaf cars, which are a little shorter. They're a single level coach with the big picture windows as I just described. So when we did our research, and thankfully our researchers planned ahead, we realized that some of the bridges and the tunnels on this route between Moab and Denver were too low for the gold leaf domes. So we made sure that we were going to be shipping down enough silverleaf dome cars to Colorado. And the call out from our partners was, is there going to be an upgraded service? And we decided to come up with a Silverleaf Plus. And what Rocky Mountaineer has is we have two lounge cars that we have access to, and they're being renovated as we speak. So they'll be freshly renovated lounge cars, which will be, what we will do is attach them to a Silverleaf dome car. So our guests, when they purchase Silverleaf Plus, will have access to that dome car, to that lounge car, where they can go in, sit in the lounge, enjoy a cocktail, because there will be a host within the lounge car preparing signature cocktails. And they'll have that extra space to go in and relax, view the scenery from within the lounge car, kind of migrate back and forth between their seated rail car, Silverleaf car, and the lounge. It also provides them with some additional benefits in the way of the culinary experience. We're offering an additional course choice for lunches and breakfast, lunches and dinner, I'm sorry, and also signature cocktails and high-end spirits with signature cocktails on board the train as well. So there's those extra little elements of luxury associated with the Silverleaf Plus. And I have to say, our Silverleaf Plus service is selling quite quickly. So if you're interested in that upgraded service, I would plan to book early.
I believe it, because that sounds outstanding, to upgrade to that Silverleaf Plus and really enhance an already fabulous service. Can we go back real quick and touch on the route itself and the stop in Glenwood Springs, because you'd mentioned it's 5 hours between Moab and Glenwood, and then you do an overnight. The interesting thing I think about Glenwood Springs as a stopping point is that there is a lot to do in Glenwood Springs, and to have one night there gives people an opportunity to do, to kind of explore that town there. But there's the hot springs as well, correct?
Yeah, exactly, Todd. So Glenwood Springs is a resort city, in Colorado. It's known for those hot springs. It sits in the rugged Rocky Mountains, surrounded by the White River National Forest. So it's a photographer's dream in that region. The Glenwood Canyon is in the area, and it's rich with wildlife. And if there's time allowed, and I would say during the longer days in the late summer, early fall months, you could perhaps take a venture up to the Hanging Lake with its beautiful turquoise waters. But the town itself is very much has an Old West cowboy feel to it. And the hotels that we're working with, Rocky Mountaineer has contracted hotels right in the center of town, and they're literally 5 to 7 minute walk from the train station. So properties like the Hotel Denver, the Hotel Colorado, and the Glenwood Hot Springs Lodge, which does have a big hot springs pool. Now, we can't guarantee our guests a specific hotel, because we assign rooms and hotel accommodations 30 days prior to departure as a way to control our inventory. But all of these hotels are good quality and capture the flavor of the Southwest in this region. And there's some things to do in town. There's some great little boutique family-owned restaurants and shops. And if somebody wants to take in a little more of the history of the Wild West, they can go visit the tombstone of Doc Holliday. Doc Holliday was known for being an American gambler and a gunfighter, and was an associate of Wyatt Earp. So if anybody's watched those old cowboy movies and saw Doc Holliday, they might be interested in going to see his tombstone, which is only about a 10-minute walk from the downtown area. And in downtown, there's actually a Doc Holliday bar. Doc Holliday, it's a little like a saloon, if you will. So it's like a Wild West saloon named after Doc Holliday. So that's kind of a fun thing to do. And I guess they are overnight. So when we arrive in Glenwood Springs on the eastbound route, we get there at about 7 p.m. and guests have already had dinner on the train, so they don't need to worry about dinner, but they can enjoy some of the town. And then the next morning we'll depart at about 9 a.m. On the westbound route, we'll get in a little earlier. We'll get in at about 5 p.m. So they will have a little more time coming from the westbound from Denver. So if they want to spend more time in Glenwood Springs, maybe doing the westbound route is the better option of the two.
Oh, all right, and now that's some great advice, and there's some great tidbits. I always tell people, you know, the thing about traveling by train is it really is it's living history, because some of these routes, you know, they've just been here for such a long time. They played such a critical part in building the United States and the push west. And when you can talk about and go experience and see some of the history when you're off the train, that just adds to the overall experience. And then when they board the train, like you'd mentioned, when they the day between Denver and Glenwood Springs, about how long is that journey? How much time are you experiencing on the train between Denver and Glenwood?
Yeah, so that day is about an 8-hour journey. So when we leave Denver, or when we leave Glenwood Springs, so either direction, it's like a 9 to 5. So I guess that's what I would call a pretty leisurely 9 to 5 day.
Yeah, for sure, right?
Compared to our normal 9 to 5 work, right?
Right.
So that's about 8 hours. So it actually covers less in terms of miles. It's only about 175 miles of coverage, Todd. But we go at a slower speed because we're going through those winding canyons and steeper areas. So the train has to go a little bit more meandering through, which is great because the guests, you know, in those areas, people want to take photos and they want to really soak in the scenery and the majesty. So we're going at a little bit of a slower speed. That's why the day is a little bit longer.
Very nice, very nice, and that's a spectacular leg, like you'd mentioned as well. So, so it's a fabulous route. I mean, like I said earlier, it's a fantastic route between Denver and Moab, and then I think another great part of it is that what you can do on either end when you're not when you've completed that rail experience. There's so much to do around, you know, there's so much to do around Denver, right? You can go to Rocky Mountain National Park. You could just explore the downtown area, you know, see the fabulous, you know, what is done at Denver's Union Station. It's a fabulous train station with like communal tables and coffee shops and restaurants and you know, if you want to venture again outside of Denver, you know, there's some historic rail lines like the Georgetown Loop, not too far outside of Denver, and then as well when the travelers, you know, before they board the train in Moab, or if that's where they depart the train, you're in Utah, right? And all those national parks that are just in the vicinity of Moab, you know, whether it's, you know, Arches or Canyonlands, Zion or Bryce. So, you know, people can look at this, I think, you know, look at this route as just the beginning of a building block for a fabulous experience in the United States.
Yeah, Todd, I think building block was like a perfect way to sum it up. You know, the rail experience and what's surrounding it, it's like two components, and building them into one vacation is what we, Rocky Mountaineer and Vacations by Rail, specialize in, right? So we've got the train component, that's our foundation. But like you said, you know, Denver and the surroundings in Denver have so many things to offer. You know, you're within an hour in many directions of great sites. There's other, you know, sort of day short historic rail experiences like Pikes Peak Cog Rail, and people can take journeys in every direction through the Colorado National Parks and areas around there. And the city is fantastic. And then, of course, like you said, Moab, it's the gateway to Utah's Mighty Five. You've got these amazing national parks that are all have their own unique signature experience to them. And, your company has curated some fantastic packages that combine all of these things and give the guests the opportunity to customize and maybe do a self-drive vacation, or they can choose a more inclusive sort of guided vacation so they can sit back, relax, and enjoy without having to navigate on their own. So there's so many ways to plan a trip around this particular route in this destination.
Michael, it's a fabulous ad. The Rockies to the Red Rocks is such a fabulous ad to Rocky Mountaineer's already spectacular routes. So, Rocky Mountaineer in Canada, right? You have the first passage to the west. It's Vancouver, Kamloops, Banff, Journey Through the Clouds, which goes between Vancouver, Kamloops, and Jasper, and the rainforest of the Gold Rush, Vancouver, Whistler, Quesnel, Jasper. And now to add this in the United States, the Rockies to the Red Rocks between Moab, Glenwood Springs, and Denver. It's an ideal fit to those already three spectacular routes. So whether someone's taking the Rocky Mountaineer in the United States or enjoying one of the routes up in Canada, what are your recommendations? What are your inside tips? What should people be considering or looking for when they're taking the Rocky Mountaineer in one of their routes?
I guess I could say, Todd, my overarching advice would be for first-time travelers to experience Rocky Mountaineer in either Canada or the United States route is to think big. When you're going to go there, and if you've not been to those regions before, try to take in as much as you can before and after the rail experience. Like we've talked about some of the national parks in the Southwest. It's similar in Canada where, if you were to just do the rail experience, it's going to be a great trip. But if you add on Jasper National Park and the Icefields Parkway and Chateau Lake Louise, you've got these historic palatial hotels in Alberta and all throughout Western Canada. The scenery is just amazing. So make sure you make this a trip of a lifetime by building in all of those things that are must-sees, and take the advice and the expertise of the travel consultants at Vacations by Rail, because they know the packages that are available in both Canada and now in the United States. And I would also make sure, and I'd like to mention that right now is a great time to book because we have promotions that we've never seen before at Rocky Mountaineer, especially for this Rockies to the Red Rocks. Right now we're offering a $300 savings per couple on all packages between October 24th and November 18th, which was a recently announced extension to our season. Because of the initial popularity of this particular route in the United States, we've extended the season that additional 3-4 weeks. So if anybody books between now and April 18th, they would earn that $300 savings per couple. And we've also recently created kind of a flexible booking process where guests make their deposit and they can be kind of worry-free, if you will, until 30 days prior to departure. Their deposit is refundable, which has never been done. So we want people this year in 2021 to feel comfortable, have that peace of mind when they book with Rocky Mountaineer, and we've made those enhanced flexible terms a way to make it comfortable and easy to book right now and plan a trip for later this year.
That's great. That's great insider tips and advice, and great offers that you have out there. And also extending the season, I think, was a smart idea, because when you go into October in this part of the country, it's a beautiful time. As you're moving into the fall season with the changes of color, I think people are really going to gravitate to those types of experiences where they can see a season change when they're taking the train as well. So I think it's going to be spectacular. Michael, thank you for sharing all this information, and congratulations to Rocky Mountaineer on launching this new Rockies to the Red Rocks route. Look forward to seeing it go. I'm sure we're all ready to travel. So looking forward to hearing about the inaugural run later this year, and we can maybe talk about some of the other routes that Rocky Mountaineer has to offer in another Rail Insider episode.
That would be fantastic. I've enjoyed this conversation, Todd, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity.
That concludes this episode of the Rail Insider. I'd like to thank Michael Comeau for joining us. For more information on Rockies to the Red Rocks, as well as Rocky Mountaineer's Canadian routes, visit www.vacationsbyrail.com. For specific questions on rail packages around the world, including in the United States and Canada, contact a rail specialist at 1-877-929-7245. From everyone at Vacations by Rail, I'm Todd Powell. Thank you for listening.